My guest today on the podcast is David Gordon. David Gordon is an author, a teacher, an educator, a carpenter, a philanthropist, amazing person, author of Therapeutic Metaphors, a great book on therapeutic metaphors, Ericksonian metaphors, great book called Phoenix, about going to Phoenix and working with Milton Erickson there in hypnosis, and a wonderful best book, I think, in the literature about NLP modeling called Expanding Your World. So David Gordon, this is a conversation we had last December for a fundraiser we were doing for Mary Lou and Jerry Seavey. And so this is a recording of that conversation. Enjoy. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast, a show devoted to uncovering the systems and the secrets that set the best apart, where you learn how to take your coaching clients to the next level, while you grow the coaching practice of your dreams. So sit back and relax, or sit up and get excited. Either way, you might want to pay attention. This could be important. Hey, David. It's nice to see you.
Well, it's lovely to see you too, Doug. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time. And
As in years.
As in years, yes. Thank you for pointing that out. Many years, David Gordon.
Thank you for pointing that
out. So we are gathered here today to raise money for Marilyn and Jerry Seavey. And by doing that, we're just going to basically have fun. And instead of having this be some, heavy duty teaching thing, we're just going to chat, and people will get to know the real David Gordon, the man behind the myth. The
Uh-oh. I'm out of here.
Because no, I mean, when we were talking before, you thought, oh, but people won't know me. I'm way past, because you're doing other things with your life now. You're not training so much. You're not authoring anymore NLP or hypnosis books. But you did. You some of my favorite hypnosis books. Metaphorical trans. What's the name of the title?
Therapeutic Metaphors.
Therapeutic Metaphors. Yeah, my favorite book.
Yeah. Read it once a year.
But literally it is, and I teach from it all the time. I teach classes about it, and all the time. And I never really learned anything about modeling really until I learned it from you and your modeling stuff. It's just extraordinary what you do and what you've offered and brought to the field. The book Phoenix is again one of my favorite Ericksonian hypnosis books. So I am thrilled to have you here, and I'm thrilled to be just chatting with you because I've learned so much from you over the years.
Well, it's a pleasure under any circumstances to have some time with you.
Yeah,
this is lovely.
So
what should we talk about?
Well, let's talk about NLP, because Marilyn and Jerry both have been around the NLP world for a long time. They're both trainers in NLP, and you were around from the get-go. Were you not from the very?
I was.
Like from before it was even called NLP?
That's right. Yeah, originally I ran into Richard in a bank in a Wells Fargo in Santa Cruz, and we got to talking, and he told me, he invited me to an evening he was doing where he had a group of people, and he was teaching the group how to do therapy, and in those days it was originally
Gestalt.
Gestalt therapy, right? The Fritz Perls take on Gestalt therapy,
right?
And so it sounded interesting. It coincided with my having given up my original major at the university there, which was in psychobiology.
And psychobiology.
Yeah. I got through 3 years of psychobiology, and I ended up doing some original research in which I killed a whole lot of hamsters, and I didn't like that. It overwhelmed me. And so I switched to psychology. And that coincided with my meeting with Richard. So I went, and I had an amazing time there. Leslie was there, Leslie Cameron, who became Leslie Cameron Bandler. Leslie Cameron was there, and a bunch of the other original luminaries. And I just never left. I mean, it was fabulous. Kind of amazing things were being done, and Richard was brilliant. And very soon I found out that there was another class going on simultaneously that John was leading. Robert was in that one.
So we're talking about group. John Grinder and Robert Diltz.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Yes.
It's okay.
And we just did. It was about that time then that they got introduced to Virginia Satir. I don't know if you guys know all this stuff. I don't know if you need to know all of it, but Richard was living on oh God, what was his name? The guy who was the
Gregory Bateson?
No, but he was living on the same property that Gregory Bateson was.
Oh, okay.
But the reason he was there was that the editor of Science and Behavior books owned a house up there in the woods. Uh-huh. And that's where they did the sending out books and orders for books. They had in a big canvas like house there. And Richard got a job working there. And so that's what he was doing, was filling orders.
Huh.
This is as I understand it. And, one of the things that was going on was that one of the things he had there were all these films of Fritz Perls doing his work. So Richard, just as he does, just soaked it up. He watched them and just soaked it up. And he so impressed them with his knowledge that they said, well, here's this unfinished book of Perls. Would you edit it into a book? And he did. And they published it. Science and Behavior published it. And that's how, as I understand it, he got his introduction and became sophisticated in Gestalt therapy, and that's what he was teaching us. And we had a fabulous time. But then about at that same time, the two of them got introduced to Virginia Satir. So of course they brought that back to the group, and we started doing parts parties and all of that kind of stuff, and doing Virginia. And somewhere along that line, what happened was I had Debbie, my wife, and I, we left Santa Cruz then for various reasons, so she could resume her education. And during the year and a half or two that we were gone, John and Richard created the meta model and started what became NLP. So I came back on a visit, and I went up and visited John, who was up living at the house then, and found out what they'd been up to. I went, well, that's it. We're coming back to Santa Cruz. And so we did. And, I just started working with them. They had then they had weekly, sometimes bi-weekly meetings up at Richard's house. And
just out of curiosity, when you say bi-weekly, you mean twice a week or every 2 weeks?
Yeah. No, more like twice a week.
Okay, cool.
Depending on what was going on. Yeah.
Okay.
And it was, Robert was there, and Leslie was there, and Mary Beth, and a bunch of other people who went out into the world, and some just went away. But the format was pretty much the same every night, which was we'd get together, we'd assemble, and Richard and John would describe to us some amazing thing that they discovered about people and how to work with people, and how to bring about change. And then they say, now you guys go do it. And So we'd get into these little pairs or trios or whatever it was we needed to be. And we would go do it. You know, it was hypnosis or some kind of change intervention, or watching pictures come up on people's faces, all kinds of things.
I'm sorry, what? Pictures?
Pictures come up on people's faces.
Pictures would come up on people's faces.
Yeah, that was one of the, we spent some time learning to see pictures, what people were thinking of on their faces.
I missed that one. So somehow they didn't teach that.
I swear to you, huh? Yeah, we didn't pursue that. So, but we had quite a bit of success there that night, because one of the things that was interesting. Go ahead.
I was just asking, what drugs were you on at the time, if any?
Whatever was around. What do you got? Man, this was the 70s.
It's the 70s in Santa Cruz. Come on.
Yeah. So, come on.
All right. So pictures on people's faces, got it. And
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the point was, the interesting thing about it was that we, of course, were all in awe of Richard and John.
Yeah.
Which is the way they liked it. And we were incredibly motivated to succeed at whatever task they gave us.
Mm-hmm.
And so we worked our asses off. And then at the end of each evening, we'd reassemble. Meanwhile, they'd come around and they'd observe and they'd talk with us and interact with us, which was fantastic. And then at the end of the evening, we'd get together and they start finding out what did we learn, what were we able to do, what was difficult, what happened. And it became evident only much later on that we were teaching them, that they would set up for us things to do, send us out to do it, and then find out how we did it. And that way they would learn they would learn things about how to intervene and make a difference.
So you were
it was great.
Yeah, sounds fantastic. So everybody was learning, so everybody was good.
Yeah. And so then we bring in people that we knew or somebody we met who had a problem. We just bring them in, and then we figure out how to fix them. And then we talk about, well, what did we do to fix them? I mean, one night, Richard brought this guy to me and he said, this guy's accessing cues are backwards. And it makes me nuts. I want you to switch his accessing cues so that they're normal.
Well, that sounds ecological. I don't see how anything could go wrong.
Okay. I mean, and first of all, you don't say no to Richard. Secondly, he has the complete analog of course you can and will do this. Right. And so, and so I'm off into a room with this guy, and I'm having to figure out how am I going to switch his accessing cues. And I did. And
you did.
Yeah.
Great.
At least for that night. At least for that night. I don't know about after that.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, but anyway, the early days that was what was so fantastic about the early days of NLP for those of us who were there, which was, it wasn't a case of, we were getting seminars from Richard and John.
Right. No.
That's what people get in our seminars. We were gathering together as a group of people who were curious about what makes human beings tick.
Yeah.
And we were also all young and believed that we were invincible and could do anything.
Right.
That makes for a good time. So we did. It was all about exploring and figuring out what was possible, what could we do, and we thought anything was possible. So we felt that there were no limitations on what we could discover, what we could do. So it was an exciting time.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds amazing. And the accessing cues came out of those groups, didn't it? Or wasn't that one of the things that Bandler and Grinder discovered by you guys doing it? my recollection. Is that correct or not?
Well, I wasn't involved in that. My understanding is that that was something that came out of interactions that John and Robert had in I think I probably shouldn't be talking about this, but that has never stopped me in the past. So, but as I recall, I think that John was teaching in a class at the University Santa Cruz. Robert was in the class. He was also in our evening groups, but Robert was in his class. And something grabbed John's attention, I think, in the class. That somebody, every time he asked students a question, he'd see them looking up in a certain direction. And he started talking with Robert about what's going on here? What's that about? And I think the two of them, I could be wrong, but I think the two of them explored that.
Okay.
And they were the ones who, at least initially identified this phenomenon that, became so central to NLP.
Cool. And there's another thing I've always wanted to ask, and I think I've always forgotten to ask it. So maybe now is the perfect time. In the book, Frogs into Princes, there's this one section where it describes that you look up to the left when you're remembering pictures, look up to the right when you're constructing pictures, and everything's like this. And it said, except for the people from the Basque region of France, who are opposite. And I don't know how many thousands of millions of people have read that and think, oh, well, that's really interesting that those people but wasn't that just a joke because Leslie Cameron was from the Basque region of France or something like that, as far as
No, she is definitely not. I can tell you that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Not even her ancestors.
Okay. Okay. So,
no.
Okay. So not Leslie Cameron, but was that a joke? I mean, there's no the Basque region of France. Where did that come from? What is that? What are they talking about?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I can't credit it. I can't just say it's not true. I have no idea.
I can say it's not true. It's not true.
Yeah.
See, I said it. It wasn't hard. Try it. Say it with me. It's not true.
It's not true.
Yeah, there you go. See?
Yeah.
You're welcome. Yeah. So tell us some stories that we never would have heard before about Bandler, Grinder, Leslie, Robert, Stephen. Come on, spill it, dish. Now's your opportunity. Get it off your chest.
I don't got that much of a chest to get anything off of, buddy.
Come on, you're so modest. Okay, well then don't do that. But tell me a little bit about your meetings with Milton Erickson, because you wrote this amazing book about writing metaphors. So,
well, Leslie and I and a few other people went to a couple of times went to spend a week with Erickson, and we were recording the whole time we were there, and that became the basis for the Phoenix book. Gosh, first of all, he was very nice to us and hospitable. He brought us into his home. We went to his home, and Betty was most gracious to us and showed us around the house, and we had a lovely time there. And actually, Betty continued to be very nice to me in the following years as well. But I think we had probably pretty much the same experience most people had when they went to visit him. He was always on. Maybe there was a few moments when we were in his house and he was showing us around where he wasn't really on, but probably I was wrong even about that. But he was always busy. That was my experience. He's always busy, not just paying attention to people and what's going on with them, figuring out, how to manipulate him. But actually doing that, and seeing what he could do with people. And I think that was his thing. You want a story? We had, I think, to me, a wonderful story was on our first trip there. On our first trip there was Leslie and myself and Mary Beth, and I guess Debbie was there too, Debbie, my wife. And every day, he'd be telling them stories. We'd doing trance, and he'd be telling stories. And very often he'd be talking about climbing Squaw Peak.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, we had quite a few stories climbing Squaw Peak. And in the morning, he'd say something to us where he's trying to, what became clear to us after the first, maybe second day, was he was trying to get us to climb Squaw Peak without telling us to climb Squaw Peak. And, us being the young Turks that we were, and, in the evening we get together and talk about what happened during the day, and we all recognize, okay, he's trying to get us to climb Squaw Peak. But by God, we're not going to do it. He thinks he can get us to do it, but he's not going to get us to do it. So this went on for 4 or 5 days. And then on the morning of the last day, we got up, and we kind of, while we're talking, went, oh God, he'll be so disappointed if we don't climb Squaw Peak. So we all got up and we went up and climbed Squaw Peak. And we came back, and we went to our morning with him, and we totally climbed Squaw Peak, and he was pleased.
He said,
but I thought it was hilarious. We climbed Squaw Peak. He succeeded in getting us to climb Squaw Peak. After we were bound and determined we were not going to do it, just to show him that he couldn't make us do it.
You can't make me. Come on, give it your best shot. Oh, golly.
Yeah. Well, another one, Willie was there on our second trip. Willie Swenson was one of our trainers, was a very good hypnotist, very good. He worked, Erickson worked with him, and he put Willie in a trance, and Willie couldn't talk after that. He just couldn't talk in the trance at all. So he decided to bring him out, and he couldn't bring him out of trance. Willie was in trance for like 3 hours a day. He kept working, coming back to Willie, trying to get him out. He couldn't get him. Willie was just sitting there going, oh. It was hilarious.
I'm sure Willie thought it was really funny too, that he couldn't talk. You have a sick sense.
I sure really did.
Hey, Mary Beth, who is Mary Beth?
Mary Beth Myers Anderson.
Okay.
Who's now passed away. But she was in the original. So what happened originally? So, all right. So here we are, as I was describing, developing what we were already calling NLP. Richard and John were doing some trainings, like at Greenwood Lodge and other places, some of the early trainings. And we were not training there. The rest of us, it was just Richard and John. But then at those early trainings, they started bringing us on. I remember Richard was supposed to teach anchoring at one of these big trainings. And he said, you do it.
To who?
Yeah, to me.
You? Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking 5 minutes before. You do it. So like I said, you didn't say no.
Yeah.
And so I went, okay. So I got up in front of the group and I started teaching anchoring. And then and Richard was standing in the back of he came in and then just started standing in the back of the room. He stood there the whole time and watched me teach anchoring to this whole group, studying. I got to tell you, it was
no pressure. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. And then at one point, I was going to demonstrate using 2 anchors at a time, 2 people doing anchoring at the same time. I remember, so I had a subject up on the chair, and I asked for a volunteer, and nobody came up, so Richard came up. So Richard came up, and he went up there, and he was my assistant.
Great.
It was great. It was really great. I mean, it was a baptism by fire, but you know, it was he was very smart about so many things. And of course, after that, I had no fear. You know, I just went, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. And so those were the early days. But so anyway, the thing I was trying to get to, I hope you like rambling because you've got it.
Oh yeah.
Is that Leslie decided that what we needed to do was we needed to kind of bring some cohesiveness to what we were doing. And so she talked with Richard about this, and what she wanted to do was to create a training institute. So they agreed on doing that. And so she brought in me, Mary Beth, who was a fabulous hypnotist, Mary Beth Myers Anderson, and Robert Diltz. And she and Robert, Mary Beth and myself, and John and Richard, and oh my goodness. See, that's what happens when you get to be 70. Anyway, one other person. We started the NLP Training Institute in Santa Cruz, the very first one.
Mm-hmm.
So Leslie was the head. She was the executive. I was the head of training, and Robert was the head of research. And we bought I shouldn't say that. Richard and Leslie bought a church in Santa Cruz, a defunct church with a house next to it. It was fabulous.
Nice.
And the church, we renovated the church, renovated the house, and it became our offices and our training center. And it was the very first training center. It was called DOTAR, Division of Training and Research in NLP.
Wow.
And Santa Cruz. And that's where Leslie and Robert and I and Mary Beth sat around for day after day, week after week, and month after month, creating the first practitioner training, master practitioner training, and then ultimately trainer trainings. And we had other kinds of trainings as well. So we created all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
And, yeah. Oh man, those were good days. There, under one roof was Leslie and myself and Robert, and we had clients coming in that we'd work with, and then if we wanted help or we had questions, we could go next door. I could go next door to Robert and say, Robert, come in here, or Leslie, come in here. What are we going to do with this person? And we learned a lot. We learned an absolute lot, and besides being a hell of a lot of fun. And then we created these practitioner trainings, and people came from all over the country and eventually all over the world to DOTAR, and we certified them. We came training, certified them, and they went off, and started training centers, and it just started going.
So did Mary Lou and Jerry study there? Because I know that they said they studied, or Mary Lou said that they studied with Leslie, and I think Mary Beth, I think they mentioned that name.
They may well have. I have to say, I don't remember them in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
But they could well have been. So there was DOTAR in Santa Cruz, but then what we started doing were the summer residential trainings at UC Santa Cruz.
Uh-huh.
So those were 10 continuous weeks of training.
What? 10 weeks?
10 weeks of continuous training.
Oh
we worked so hard. It was amazing. They worked hard. Everybody worked really hard. Yeah, they were in training all day. They'd have evening things to do. It was intense.
Wow.
Oh yeah, it was intense. So it was a whole practitioner training or a whole master practitioner training in those 10 weeks. And people came from all over the world. And usually there was about 200 people at a time in there.
Right.
So, you know, they may have been in those trainings, and I wouldn't have necessarily, you know, known them. So I don't know. I don't remember them at the trainings we did at Dotar.
Okay. So were Richard and John still involved as time went on, or did they let you guys just have that ball and run with it?
Well, they did let us have the ball and run with it, but they were involved. Okay. Absolutely, they were involved. So, you know, whatever we created in terms of our the practitioner trainings and so on, of course, we talked with them about it and got their input. So yes.
But they didn't do the trainings themselves, though.
No, they would do trainings too.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, they participated as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah. Although, you know, they did more advanced stuff. You know, they did more advanced stuff. They, you know, we didn't bring John or Richard in to teach anchoring.
Right.
You know, we didn't do that. I don't think they would have done that at that point. So no, and meanwhile, and while that was going on, they were traveling a lot. They were being brought to, you know, way the hell and gone around the country, and sometimes to Europe to do trainings as well for one institution or another. So
I'm sorry, what
yes, they were involved.
What year would this have been approximately?
Okay, so this would have been 70. So let's see. Phoenix or Therapeutic Metaphors came out just before. That was 78. So I believe we started it in 78. Is that right? 78. I think we started late 78, maybe early 79, but I think late 78 was Dotar. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's when that was. And then, you know, it lasted for 3 years, about 3 years. And then, you know, Leslie and Richard went to Splitsville, and everything went to hell really fast. Really fast.
Okay.
So, you know, there was a divorce, and mom and dad decide, you know, we're going, you know, well, whose side are you on? So, you know, it just fell apart, which, as I'll tell you, as I've always said many, many times in other seminars and other contexts, I think it was a good thing for NLP and for us as individuals, because we were pretty full of ourselves in those days, and there was a level of cultishness that was starting to develop, I feel, and I just, you know, in retrospect, once I was outside of it, I went, I don't think that was such a good thing, the direction we were heading in. And so, you know, by breaking up, that, at least in that context, was ended. And also, you know, nobody knows what would have happened if we hadn't, of course.
Yeah, right.
But I do know that after we broke up, Leslie and I continued to work very closely for many years, and we still are. It's the very best of friends. But the things that we did together and that we created together, I think, were fabulous, and I don't know that they would have occurred if we'd stayed together as a unit there.
Cool. So, hey, since I have you here, where's Leslie these days? You're still close to friends as she?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's living in Hawaii.
Hawaii
right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh yeah. I talk with Leslie all the time and see her when I can. Yeah.
Do you travel to Hawaii and hang out?
Sure.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. Why isn't it a nice place to visit? Hey, you guys wrote a book or two together, didn't you? Even.
Oh yeah, yeah. We wrote a few. Yeah. So we wrote Know How and the Imprint Method. Um, so working with Michael LeBeau, her husband, we started looking at ways to model behavior, and we came up with a whole format for doing that called the Imprint Method. Which we wrote the Imprint Method about, which is, I think, terrific, although I think it has its limitations. I didn't realize it at the time, but I think the Imprint Method turned out to be a great way to model states more than behaviors. But in any case, we did that, and then we used that model to model different kinds of abilities. And originally, when we wrote it as one great big book that had the application of the model and the model. And, it turned into a gigantic tome, and it was too much. So we broke it into two books. Here's the model, and then the other one is Know How, where we just give examples of using it to, model different kinds of abilities. And I think it was terrific. I thought it was terrific. And
is that what led to your later modeling book, the expanding your?
Well, the two things that I was interested in were modeling and metaphor. And yeah, so I was always interested in modeling. And then, so Leslie stopped working, and but I was still interested in modeling. And I was training an awful lot in England with a friend of mine there, Graham Dawes, who was also interested in modeling. So we started taking it apart and looking at it more deeply, and in a different from a different perspective. And over the years, we developed our own way of thinking about how to capture useful descriptions of experience. That's what a model is a useful description of how somebody does something.
So that was the book that you created, the Expanding Your World with Graham.
Expanding Your World. Yeah, that was the kind of the user's guide to modeling. It's kind of a easy, a quick introduction. That's how I feel about it. Then we followed that with the modeling handbook for modeling. What do I call it? The modeling handbook. Anyway, what that is a detailed, I think, a much more in-depth exploration of the structure of experience. I mean, that's all NLP was always intended to be, was the exploration of the structure of experience. What makes us tick? How do we tick? And that book, the handbook, I think is the most important thing that I certainly have ever been involved with or wrote, because it really describes much of what goes into making people tick. So, I'm actually anyway, but I gave up. Teaching modeling ended up being kind of disappointing, because it turns out the modeling is a lot of work.
Well, I took your 12-day training in it, so I know that that's true.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and and people understandably don't want to do that, a lot of work. I totally get that. And so for quite a while, really my goal in teaching modeling for the last some years of teaching it was not to teach people to do modeling, although if they learn to do that, great. But mainly what I wanted them to have was an appreciation for other people, an appreciation for the layers that are operating inside of people's experience and the capabilities that they have, whether they recognize them or not. And so I'm big on appreciation, and I that's really what I was hoping they would get. It's just a appreciation for a richer understanding of human experience.
Yes.
And I think that's worth having.
Yeah, no, for sure. I loved your training on modeling, actually, and I've done it a few times since then, modeling people. One of the really distinctions that I got from your training, and it's real basic, but still it was important, was that you're modeling an ability, not the person. Because in the early days, I always thought, oh, you're going to model Erickson, or you're going to model this person or that person. It's like, no, you don't model them. You model an ability that they have. You don't need to know how they fold their laundry. You need to know how they, do a hypnotic induction or something.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. You will never be another person. I don't care how much modeling you do.
I know.
No, that just doesn't happen,
Although I am a different person than I was 10 years ago.
Well, that's a different thing. That's a different thing. You won't become another person.
Yes, I will.
Huh?
I'll become an.
You know what? I'll tell you what, something I brought, I used to take with me to seminars.
Yeah.
And I would use it in some seminars when it was relevant, talking just about this topic. It was a progress report about me when I was 5 or 6 years old. Yeah. So, the teacher, it's this blue piece of paper with a lamb drawn on the front. And it has all these different categories and things about little David, and about, his ability to get along with others, and his sense of humor, and his willingness to try this, and his what's he afraid of, what's he good at, what he can do physically. And you just read through this and you go, what? I'm no different than that now than I was then. That's the same person. That is, David is still here.
He's always telling stories. He's always telling.
Yeah,
stories.
it's just, it's just, when I first unearthed that, I don't know, 15 years or 20 years ago, and looked at it, I went, holy crap.
Yeah.
God, my teacher nailed me then. She recognized me now, although, I probably have more hair than.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know how I got it. Oh, well, but there's people, for instance, Stephen Gilligan, I think, is a good example of this. Stephen, you know who Stephen is.
I know, yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. So Stephen, the big experiment that was done with him, that Richard and John did with him, this was in the Greenwood.
Okay, go. This is good. This is a good story.
Yeah. So they put him in a deep trance.
Yeah, a double induction, as they're called. Richard on one side, John on the other.
Yeah, we used to do that. Yeah, actually, I did that with Richard, and I used to do that with my wife Debbie. But anyway, so they put him in a deep trance and sat him down. I can still see him sitting there. They sat him down in front of a television, and they just played videotapes. In those days, it was videotapes of Milton Erickson doing inductions and working with people and doing inductions for, I don't remember, hours. And then when they finished, they just left him in trance. They just left him in a trance, and he was Milton Erickson. He just moved like him. He talked like him. He all of a sudden he was doing trance work with people. It was amazing. It was pretty amazing.
Was the story true that he had to be in a wheelchair?
He did there was a while. I don't know if he had to be. He didn't have to be, but for a while he was going around in a wheelchair. And Milton Erickson, when he met him, was alarmed. and warned him. He said, you've got to stop this, or you're going to end up with polio.
Oh, really?
And so anyway, but the reason I was bringing that up was, of course, we knew Stephen Gilligan before, and we knew him quite well. And then he became Milton Erickson, Stephen Gilligan. But those of us who knew him well still went, that's still Stephen.
Mm-hmm.
That's Stephen Gilligan doing Milton Erickson.
Right.
Okay, amazing job of it, but it was not the case, despite what I know, people said, and even I probably said in those days, he did not become Milton Erickson, nor could you become somebody else by deep trance identification.
Right.
That didn't happen. His personality was still there. It was just his personality was being overlaid or interlaced with the behaviors of Milton Erickson and these ways of perceiving things of Milton Erickson.
Right, right, of course. And I think bottom line is you don't have to become Milton Erickson or anyone else in order to take on their ability. That Stephen is still a pretty good hypnotist. I vouch for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we don't need another Milton Erickson. We got one of those. We need Stephen Gilligan, who can bring, what is special about Stephen Gilligan to the world. That was one of my big things.
Yeah.
Which I think he's been doing.
Oh, yeah.
He's
no doubt.
He's been bringing things into the world that are pure Stephen Gilligan that Milton Erickson didn't and never would.
Yeah.
And I think that's good.
Yeah, of course. Cool. Yes. So first time I ever went to Phoenix, I was there, and I Erickson had passed away, and I went to climb Squaw Peak, and there wasn't there. There was no Squaw Peak because they changed the name to Piestewa.
What?
Yeah, they changed the name because squaw is apparently a not nice thing to say.
Oh, right. Oh, right. When did they do that?
Oh, a long time ago. This is the 1990s that they did this. So it's now called Piestewa. The Piestewa is I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, is the last name of a woman, native woman from Phoenix, I believe, who was in the Gulf, the Gulf War. She went to she went to Iraq and was killed in the Gulf War. So they named it after her as homage. Her.
Well, great. I had obviously this is the first I've heard of this. Oh, jeez. All right. But so anyway, I did climb Piestewa because I had heard so many different stories from different people that's it's just kind of a rise in the hill. You could just walk up, it's easy. And then other people go, this enormous mountain that takes you days. I just wanted to see for myself. So it's climb. I mean, it's a challenge. You climb something when you climb it for sure. Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially
the last bit of it to get to the very top. You're literally climbing up to the top for sure.
Yeah. Was the Erickson bench? Was the Erickson memorial bench there when you?
No, it was prior to that.
No, it wasn't there.
Yeah, I've been there since then. So I've rested on the bench. Yeah, it's nice.
Good.
Nice bench. Breathed in some Milton because his ashes have been scattered up there.
Yeah, I know.
I am becoming Erickson. With every breath, you get more and more Ericksonian.
Wow. Yeah, he was a trip. He was amazing. Yeah.
So cool that you were able to meet him. And when you wrote Therapeutic Trances, do you feel like that was a fairly good representation of the way he created trances? Is that
okay, wait a minute, you mean Therapeutic Metaphors?
Sorry, there's Therapeutic Metaphors. I'm sorry.
No.
My favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time.
Okay, so of course, when it comes to trance, obviously the best. But I had no real interest at all in the trance work. I used to do it a lot, but I actually didn't. I hated it. I found it boring.
Huh?
Talking to somebody while they sat there and were not responding, not talking with me. And I like talking with people. So what I was interested in what he did, there were two things. One was his use of metaphor as a way of conveying experiences and reference experiences, both experience and reference experiences, in it without confronting people. So I thought that was fabulous. And the other thing was how he, with the therapeutic interventions that he used in order to, get people to generate new reference experiences or new behaviors. See, the thing to me, I always banged on about, and I'm going to bang on about it right now, is that I've always felt that the emphasis when it came to Milton Erickson was misplaced. The emphasis is always on, or typically on, what's most obvious and most impressive, which is his ability to put people into trances.
Yeah.
And to me, what was important, it doesn't matter if they're in a trance or not. What was important was what he did with them when they were in a trance, or when they weren't in trances either. What did he do with them in order to take their experience somewhere else? The transfer, he did not, put somebody in a deep trance and say, when I snap my fingers twice, your problem will be gone. He didn't do that. He put them in a trance, and then he took them on experiences. He gave them experiences. And, the trance created a context within which they were open to and available for reference experiences that they otherwise would not allow themselves to have, or perhaps couldn't have. And that was what was important. That's why I wrote Phoenix, because if you read Phoenix, there's nothing in there about putting people in trances. It's all about how did he interact with people in order to have an impact on their experience and how they were thinking and behaving. And that's why I also bang on about that the most important book you could read in terms of therapy, and definitely in terms of Milton Erickson, is Uncommon Therapy, Jay Haley's Uncommon Therapy.
Have it right here.
Yeah. As you should.
I literally do. I'm not kidding. That's right.
All right. And because that book is just filled with example after example after example of him creating reference experiences for people to change how they think and respond, not in trance. Right. It's not about trance.
Right. One of my favorite stories to that end is in your book, Phoenix, though, about the fellow who, I guess, lost a leg or something like that in the war, and he was, a student at the college, and Erickson had the people hold the elevator. And so he comes along and says, "What's going on here?" He said, "I don't know, the elevator's not working." And then Erickson looks at him and said, "Well, let's you and me, us cripples, let's take the stairs while these able-bodieds wait here for the elevator." And so the two of them, go up the stairs together, and they
Come on, it doesn't get better than that. Come on. That is fabulous. That's therapy.
Yeah.
That is therapy. That is therapy.
That's great. Amazing. Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, that's where his genius lie, I think.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's a funny thing. I was teaching once an Ericksonian hypnosis training in New York, and there's a guy there from Chicago, really funny guy from Chicago. He's I think a stock trader or something, but nevertheless, he was in my class. And he said, "Erickson was from Wisconsin?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "This is so typical. All those people from Wisconsin never don't tell you anything straight. They always try to manipulate you into doing something."
Is that right?
Typical Wisconsin guy. The Wisconsin guys.
I wonder what the Wisconsin guys say about them, about the Chicagoans.
You don't want to know.
Great. Maybe it's true.
Maybe. Yeah.
And maybe their accessing cues are reversed too.
Yeah, probably. And they all their ancestors are from the Basque region of France.
Right.
So just real quick, just for the fun, you are no longer working in this field so much. You're not doing hypnosis or storytelling or book writing or NLP training. You are, just tell us real briefly What is David Gordon up to these days?
David Gordon's never been happier. David Gordon is, I'm the executive director of a nonprofit that I started. And what we do is we design and make equipment and clothing and devices for mostly children, but children and adults who have special needs and disabilities of one kind or another. And so, you know, my day every day is a parent or a therapist coming to us and saying, you know, we've got this child who's got, we want her to be able to stand up, but she can't, she has no control, you know, from her waist down. She's got upper body control, but not below. But she needs to be on her feet sometime during the day. Can you make something that will support her so that she can be upright instead of always sitting in a chair? And we go, yeah. And we do that. We make it. We figure out how to make it. And almost everything we make here is for specific individuals. They're all custom made for specific individuals.
Wow, it's amazing. And
it is, well, you know, go ahead.
I was just going to say, for the people who can see the chair in the background you built, that's one of the chairs you built.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you can see that scoop thing on the top. So this little girl, she was born, she had all kinds of problems. Her umbilical cord had gotten wrapped around her, so she had only one eye, and her nose was split into two. She didn't have all of her hands, and anyway. But the other thing she had was the back of her skull hadn't formed. And so she had a big balloon out the back of her skull, just skin and cerebral spinal fluid back there. And it was this 6-inch balloon that stuck out, and it had to be supported all the time. So her parents, were holding her all the time.
Wow.
To support, holding her and supporting this, finding some way to support this. And she's getting bigger. And so it was getting more difficult. So they asked us to make a chair for her, and that's the chair. So we made this chair that when she sat in it, that would be supported, cradled behind her. Wow. So that they could have relief, and she could too, you know.
Wow.
So that's an example. It's kind of an extreme example, but it is a good example.
Yeah, it's amazing.
But we make all kinds. I mean, we make a chair for this young teenager who could only use her toes, and so she used her toes to operate her communication device. But then she's on the floor with her feet out, and her mother or grandmother would hold it for her, and so she would manipulate with her toes. So we ended up making a really comfortable floor chair for her that she could relax in. It was completely adjustable, and it held her communication device down where her feet were, and she could just sit there and operate it with her toes from there. So anyway, the point is that you know, the thing that I really got onto in my last years of training was trying to teach people something I called the meaningful existence model. And the whole point of that was to discover, and here comes the heresy, here comes the NLP heresy. Because NLP is all about, oh, change, become different, blah, blah, blah. And the whole point about the meaningful existence model was to discover, you know, who you are as an individual. What is it that you bring to the world that nobody else does? You know, what are the abilities, perceptions, ways of operating in the world that are, you know, manifestly you? And that the goal is not to become somebody different, but to manifest who you are in the world. That's really what life, I think, ought to be about, is to be discovering who you are, what you have to bring to the world, and then bring it. You know, manifest it in whatever way it is. And it doesn't matter what, I'm not talking about doing big things at all. I'm talking about, it could be little things. Maybe I'm, maybe somebody's good at just making people feel comfortable. And so that, feel comfortable. So they go through the world making other people feel comfortable. Great. I'm all for it. But the point is that when you are doing whatever is something that is meaningful to you,
Mm-hmm.
it's inherently fulfilling. Life becomes fulfilling when you do that. And that's what I was, that's what I was on about in the last years of my teaching, my training. And so the reason I'm saying all that is this is a manifestation of that.
Yeah.
Here, I like to build things. I like to make things. I like to help people. That's all I do every day here. That's what I do every day.
That's beautiful.
And yeah. So this is a manifestation. I am every day grateful. Every day I'm grateful that I get to do this. I'm grateful. And that's what I want for everybody.
Yeah, no, I get it. I get that. I get that fully. And gosh, we're running out of time. We've run out of time. 10 minutes ago, we ran out of time. So I will gratefully thank you for helping us to do this, because this is a labor of love for us to help, one of ours. So
yes,
really appreciate you doing this, David, coming out of retirement for doing this. Appreciate it.
What do you mean out of retirement?
Out of NLP retirement.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to see you, Doug.
Yeah, good to see you.
Talk to you
Take
later.
care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.